Welcome to I Want That, which is a podcast that focuses on the dynamic world of Disney merchandise. I'm entertainment writer Jim Hill.
And I'm entertainment writer and designer Michelle Valladolid.
And this is our first show for May of 2019. And Avengers Endgame has been out in theaters for 13 days at this point? Smashing all sorts of box office records.
Made 800 zillion billion gajillion dollars.
Well, 2.27 billion in worldwide ticket sales. Only film that's made more than that at the box office is James Cameron's Avatar. That eventually went on to sell 2.7 billion worth of tickets. And if you talk with people at Disney, they're kind of two minds. They would dearly love for Endgame to pass Avatar's box office, but again, it has to make another $500 million. But at the same time, just because Disney back in March finally acquired 20th Century Fox, and that means that Avatar is now a Disney franchise, it gets complicated.
Yeah, it does.
And another thing, frankly, that is also kind of complicating the Avengers being able to get that $500 million it needs to pass Avatar is the live-action version of Aladdin, which arrives in theaters on May 24th.
Do you really think that it's going to impact the viewership that much? Endgame has huge repeatability, and a lot of people were ticked off when they saw the not blue genie that is actually blue in the film.
The first teaser trailer wasn't the best thing on the planet. The second full-blown trailer was pretty good. I don't know if you've seen any of the interviews that Will Smith has been doing earlier this week. And in all cases, he's the first to admit, I've been in some terrible movies, which are to the audience, and you all know that. But this is a good one.
No giant spiders in this one.
Anyway, the current projections suggest that Aladdin's going to do somewhere between $70 to $90 million, which, when you consider that when the live-action Beauty and the Beast came out in March of 2017, that did over $170 million on its opening weekend. But again, it had far less competition, wasn't dealing with an Endgame out there sucking up all of into the box office. You had mentioned you had been in JCPenney lately,
right,
and they have the Disney boutiques inside the store. I guess
right.
It's the Disney collection inside of JCPenney.
Yeah, it's nice. It's all packed together in one little small section.
It would appear if you go over to the JCPenney website, they have lots and lots and lots of Aladdin stuff right now. A lot of it, if we're talking about the genie character, isn't Will Smith.
Exactly.
It keys off of Eric Goldberg's version of the genie as voiced by Robin Williams.
Well, he's not in the toys. He's not voiced by Robin Williams in the toys.
Yeah.
Oh boy, is he not. But there was this really cool one toy. It's kind of like a magic 8-ball, but it's the magic lamp. Mm-hmm. And when you turn the handle of the lid, the little jewel thing up there, it spins and stops randomly, and you get a picture from the original film with Eric Goldberg's genie and a voice quote from the film done by, I'm not going to say a sound-alike because it didn't really sound anything like him, but it was a fun voice.
Okay.
What I noticed, though, is all of the Aladdin merchandise, except for a bracelet set, was centered around the original animated film, not the new live-action version.
If you go to jcpenney.com, they have a cross-body bag that's themed to Jasmine, and it's very clearly the Naomi Scott. She's the actress who plays Jasmine in the film that Guy Ritchie directed. It's a more stylized Raja, less cartoony. But if you go to Hot Topic and look at the Aladdin merch they have there, they have items tied to Jafar. They have a lot of items tied to Aladdin. A good portion of stuff for the genie. But I would say 85% of it is Jasmine. And you can get a Jasmine peacock kimono. You can get a Jasmine peacock swim top, a swim bottom, a romper.
For the strong female heroine crowd.
There's a preponderance of t-shirts and sweatshirts and tops there with the catchphrase. There's one from the animated film, I am not a prize to be won. And the other one seems to be a significant line from the live action film, which is A Woman of Many Dreams. It was also fun while going through what Hot Topic had available for the live action Aladdin to see all of the Funko Pop figures they've done for it.
Yeah, it is. It's really nice. I also really love that Brave Little Tailor Mickey one they have, just to get totally off the subject.
Oh, I guess I've not seen that.
But I walk into Hot Topic and they're like, "No, Shelly, we don't have any new Kylo Ren stuff."
Give them 6 months. Or when is the Triple Force event? Because I guess that's also
September.
September. Okay. On the other hand, May 16th, inside of the Star Wars launch bay in Tomorrowland, inside of Disneyland, they're holding a pin trading event. It's going to run from 7 to 11 p.m. Now, mind you, not a free pin trading event. Admission is $20 per guest. But you're going to have the opportunity to pre-purchase select pins from the Up collection. Now, when they say the Up collection, what they're talking about is that they're celebrating now the 10th anniversary of the release of Pete Docter's Up. And there's actually some really charming pins. There is a celebrating 10 years money jar, and we have the young Carl and Ellie saving to go to Paradise Falls. That's an edition size of 3,000. There's what they refer to as the jumbo pin, again celebrating 10 years, and it's Carl and Ellie in their house, and they have the two of them in their very distinct chairs as they sit in reading. And again, these are them during their younger days in their marriage, and that's an edition size of 1,000.
When they say jumbo pin, they mean about the size of your hand, right?
I guess, that's the
See,
problem.
because I want a jumbo pin that I can pin on the entire back of my jean jacket.
Mm-hmm.
Like a gang logo.
They have what they call the Up Puzzle Pin Mystery Set. And revealed pin edition size of 1,100. Chaser pin edition size 600. And that looks to be a big size piece with a lot of characters. I mean, you've got Doug, you've got Russell, you've got Carl and Ellie as young kids, you've got Kevin the bird, you've even got the villain and the dogs. This event is also supposedly held at Walt Disney World on the 16th.
There is a Club 33 merchandise event going on right now at the Disneyland Hotel.
Oh, okay.
And they came out with Mai Tai glasses and tall Tiki-esque glasses, a pin that opens up and shows a Adventureland style design inside, and a bunch of other things. So,
well, sorry we missed that.
Yeah, but we're not members.
Well, mark your calendars. What is it? 2 months down the line?
2 months down the line, and I don't have an exact date yet.
Mm-hmm.
Kurt Raymond, who is the artist who does those really fantastic ride entrance murals, the Fantasyland ride entrance murals, and some other just incredible art. But in 2 months, he's going to have he's going to have a signing, and he's got 3 pieces so far that I know about. One is based on 101 Dalmatians, one is based on The Little Mermaid, and the third is based on Aladdin.
There's a surprise. Okay. And while we're telling folks to look forward to future work from Disney artists, Dave Avanzino. I never pronounce his name right. Dave has, for years now, done those amazing pieces of dimensional art with cut paper and that sort of thing. And he's got some new pieces coming out. Is that correct?
Yeah. There's I'll Get You Pen If There's the Last Thing I Do, and really cool Pirates one and stuff. And you can go to @Dave Avanzino anywhere and go to the Disneyland Resort and the Disneyana shop and a few other places and buy his work, because it can't be described. It is jaw-dropping. The attention to detail, you can tell he really loves Disney.
Mm-hmm. But more to the point, he has a unique eye that can just sculpt these wonderful pieces out of wonderful bits that are wild, but at the same time weirdly on model.
Yeah, like part of his Dead Man Tell No Tales one,
Mm-hmm.
uh, he's sculpted little bones to make up a couple of the letters.
Yikes. Okay.
It's so cool.
All right. And speaking of cool, it's what's been kind of cool for the series so far is that the nice folks at In the Book have
Yay!
been sponsoring a contest here for our podcast. For those of you who don't know, this is that series of personalized books that are published by Signature. They've got 30 different Disney-related titles, both hardcover and softcover, and based on a lot of Disney's most recent blockbusters, Moana, Finding Dory, Toy Story 3, that sort of thing. And what's cool is that because of the personalization option, you can be, or if you're selecting for your child can be added to the story, putting them right in the middle of the adventure.
Use your own name and tell your kid that's really what happened to you.
There we go. And one lucky I Want That listener is going to get the chance to do that. And you have their name, I believe.
I do. It's Joe Ruhak.
Thank you for taking part in the contest there, Joe. And the nice folks at In the Book have offered us a couple others to give away here. And if you'd be interested in taking part, folks, please send your entry along to contests, that's with an S, at jimhillmedia.com. And speaking of books, when we get back from this commercial break, we're going to talk about the latest Pixar-related Art of Book that Chronicle Books just released literally yesterday.
Let me think. Pixar, and there's a new movie coming out. Could it be?
Yeah, that would be The Art of Toy Story 4, and we'll talk about it in just a moment.
This episode is brought to you by CBS. DMV is a brand new workplace comedy turning misery into magic and chaos into comedy. Starring Harriet Dyer and Tim Meadows, DMV is here to serve you laughs. Watch Mondays at 8:30, 7:30 Central on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.
This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Healthcare professionals can lead their careers with LinkedIn. Discover jobs by specialty, preferred shifts, and even desired salary. From mental health therapists to radiology technicians, it's now faster and easier for healthcare professionals to find the right fit. Learn more at linkedin.com/healthcare. Side effects may include faster job placement, improved work-life balance, and increased career satisfaction.
Before we get started here, a good friend of the show is Dave Bossert, who's written a number of great books. In fact, just today I was looking at his Oswald book. Yeah, but a more recent project of Dave's, I want to say Kem Weber, Mid-Century Furniture, for Disney Studios.
KEMWEBER.
Got some recognition. Can you talk about that?
The book just won an award. They got the gold medal for the Eric Hoffer Book Award Gold Medal for Best Author Published Title for 2019. The annual awards celebrate excellence in independent publishing with thousands of book titles submitted each year, but Dave Bossert's book about Kem Weber won. And it's called Kem Weber, Mid-Century Furniture Designs for the Disney Studios.
And Old Mill Press put this out last year. This isn't the only award that it's won. It also took the gold and the silver and the Ben Franklin Awards this year. So
nice.
Definitely worth checking out. Again, it's a book about furniture design, folks, but doesn't sound like it should be entertaining, and it is surprisingly so.
About 10 years ago, Ethan Allen had a set called the Walt Disney Collection that was recreations of Kem Weber's furniture and also some original designs based on Kem Weber's designs for the Disney studio. And God, I loved those. But it's like $2,000 for a side table and stuff. And yeah, that wasn't going to happen. Now Ethan Allen has Disney furniture, but it's like Mickey head stuff and things like that. Boy, I'd really love to see that original one come back. I love that brutalistic style.
In the more affordable range, like $40 for the hardcover,
Oh, yeah.
is The Art of Toy Story 4, which showed up on store shelves on May 7th. And I want to be careful here because obviously
Spoilers.
we are still, a number of weeks out from Toy Story 4's June 21st release date. And what's kind of interesting about this 160-page book is that Josh Cooley, the director of the project, gets to talk about this is the first movie since Toy Story 3 came out in 2010. And in between, we had the Toy Story That Time Forgot, we had the Toy Story of Terror, the holiday specials, and the feeling was, not to mention the Toy Story tunes. And again, the feeling was that, if we're going back to theaters, especially after these projects for television and these shorts, we need to go big. So literally what's interesting about Toy Story 4 is it's widescreen. It's the first Toy Story in that format. Also, when they were sort of sussing out the story, there were a number of folks at Pixar who were like, why are we going back? We did such a beautiful job of capping the story with Toy Story 3, and it was Andrew Stanton who, had been a key member of the original story team on Toy Story, and not to mention the director of the Finding Nemo films. And he was like, no, guys, it wasn't the end of the Toy Story at the end of Toy Story 3. It was the end of Andy's story.
Andy's story, right.
Yeah, that, so Woody's story is continuing. In fact, that's what's intriguing about Toy Story 4, without giving too much away, is that what Josh Cooley talked about is like, look, if you sat the character Andy down and you asked him what the most important day of his life was, he'd say it was the time he met Bo again. And we're just going to let that hang out there and not get into many specifics. But what was kind of cool about paging through this book was at the 142 page mark of this 160-page book, turned the page and was like, oh my God, is that who I think it is? It was Tinny, who was the star of Pixar's Tin Toy short back in August of 1988, which without Tin Toy, there would have never been a Toy Story. In March of 1989, Tin Toy takes home the Oscar for Best Animated Short. No CG film had ever done that before. And as Pete Docter, who's now the new Chief Creative Officer at Pixar, recalled in an interview that he did with Alan Newitt's Making Tunes inside the most popular TV shows and movies. By the way, excellent book, well worth chasing down. He said, Ed Catmull, who's the president of Pixar, had long had dreams of doing a feature film using computers. He had this plan loosely in place that we would start by doing shorts, then we would do commercials because shorts don't actually make any money, and then we were going to do television of some sort, working our way up to a feature. So what they were hoping to do, especially on the heels of Tin Toy's Oscar win, was do a holiday special, which was going to be called A Tin Toy Christmas. And okay, so here's Doctor again, talking with Alan Newitt, describing the proposed storyline for this holiday special. So Tinny, who's that's the name of the title character for Tin Toy, is part of the set of musical musicians from the 1940s. And the thing is, they don't sell. And so they get put away in storage. And it's kind of a Rip Van Winkle-like story that when Tinny wakes up, it's now the bustling 90s.
Does that have anything to do with the magical orchestra from Kingdom Hearts in the toy store?
I'm afraid I'm not familiar with that.
Okay.
But anyway, Tinny's now in this huge mega store like Toys R Us. The idea here was that they were going to do a 22-minute long TV special, much in the style of Our Charlie Brown Christmas or, How the Grinch Stole Christmas or that sort of thing. And in the end, Tinny was going to reunite with his old bandmates and they were going to play a holiday tune. And it was envisioned as kind of a road picture with Tinny hitting the road with another toy from the 1940s, which was going to be a ventriloquist dummy that was clearly modeled on or inspired by Charlie McCarthy. But here's the thing. During the period that Tin Toy A Tin Toy Christmas is in development. Jeffrey Katzenberg is rapidly pursuing John Lasseter, trying to get him to come back to Disney Studios. And Lasseter keeps rejecting Katzenberg's recruitment efforts because, as he tells Ed Catmull, it's like, look, I can go to Disney and be a director, or I can stay here and make history. And it's mid-1990 now, and Pixar is walking around L.A. pitching a Tin Toy Christmas to all of the major networks, and who all love the idea. But when they hear about the projected costs, the original Tin Toy short, 5 minutes long, cost $300,000 to make. You extrapolate from that, it's like, okay, we're going to do 22 minutes. All right. It's going to take us $1.5 million to produce this holiday special. And the networks are like, the Charlie Brown Christmas cost $76,000. Well, it was supposed to, but it ran over budget. It went $20,000 over budget, and Coca-Cola executives almost threw themselves out the window because of that. Chuck Jones turned this to his advantage because his was the holiday special that went into production after Charlie Brown Christmas, and he was one who turned to the executives at CBS and went, "Whoa, boy, you barely got a show done for $96,000. Tell you what, just to be on the safe side, why don't you give me $300,000, and I'll guarantee you we can get you a show for that." But anyway, they end up taking Tin Toy to Disney, or a Tin Toy Christmas to Disney. And now they're trying to sell Disney on the idea of, look, this could be a holiday featurette for theatrical to release, like 1978's A Small One, or 1983's Christmas Carol. And to be honest, this was a valid idea, because about this same time, Walt Disney Animation Studios is wrapping up production of Prince and the Pauper, that Mickey featurette, and which went out in theaters in November of 1990 with Rescuers Down Under. And this was supposed to be the first of a series of new featurettes featuring Mickey Mouse, and with the idea that the artists and animators who were working at the then newly opened Walt Disney Feature Animation Florida facility at Disney MGM Studios would go forward with. Now, I know you and I, when we lived down there, we used to go through what they called the Fishbowl down at Feature Animation Florida, and where you could see the guys working on stuff. And do you remember the time we were in there, and in the story room, they had they had boards up for a section of a project that they were supposed to begin working on called Mickey's Arabian Adventure?
I don't remember that. But I remember the fishbowl and everything. I remember watching him do Hunchback.
Yep. Well, this was before they roped them in, starting with Beauty and the Beast, to start working on the full-blown features. This was the plan, that they were going to do the featurettes there. So there was Mickey's Arabian Adventure, which I remember they wanting to release in 91.
Oh, wait. In front of Aladdin, right?
Yeah. And then there was also Christopher Columbus. This was the Mickey as Christopher Columbus, and that was supposed to be out in theaters in...
What do you think of that?
Yeah, 1990, either 1992, well, it depends on which version of the rhyme you go with. As it was explained to me, it's like Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492, or Columbus sailed the deep blue sea in 1493. Either way, that was the plan. There was going to be Prince of the Pauper, followed by Mickey's Arabian Adventure, and then the Christopher Columbus Project. So they're pitching Katzenberg on, well, come here, we'll do the holiday featurette. And Jeffrey's like, oh, come on. If you're going to make a 22-minute long holiday featurette, Dumbo was only 64 minutes long. So all you'd have to do a full-length animated film is just 3 featurettes. So you can stretch a story, can't you? They go back and they're thinking about it. And in the meantime, this is late 1990. Peter Schneider, the then head of feature animation, reaches out through back channels to Cadmull and says, look, all right, tell you what. We have this deal with Tim Burton to set up an outside satellite studio to do a stop motion movie based on that thing he wrote while he was here, Nightmare Before Christmas, which, by the way, also was supposed to be a holiday special. Let's do the same thing with Pixar. Cool. Set up a 3-picture deal. You've already been here talking about Tin Toy. Jeffrey's already been talking with the guys about taking the Tin Toy Christmas and blowing it out to feature length. Let's do a deal. And sure enough, May of 1991, Steve Jobs signs a deal with Disney. It's a 3-picture deal. It's not the greatest terms. Jobs was going to get 12% of the gross ticket sales. We're only getting $26 million, and that was somehow supposed to fund the production of 3 CG films, which, given that the original Toy Story all by itself cost $30 million, at least they're running now. But of course, now that they've signed the deal, Jeffrey Katzenberg starts hammering them with notes. Problem one, as far as Jeffrey sees it, is that a tin toy from the 1940s and a Charlie McCarthy ventriloquist doll isn't going to appeal to modern kids.
And you know what? He was right.
Then it's like, the guys at Pixar, it's like, but we need strong characters, strong, relatable characters to build a whole movie around. And so the initial redo was Charlie McCarthy's too old-fashioned, but we need a conflict. This is going to be kind of a buddy comedy, at least that was initially the way the guys at Pixar were well, you remember the stories they told about Pixar, the rules for making Toy Story. No songs, no happy village. So what ends up happening is that, well, they think about, okay, when we grew up watching cowboy TV shows. If you were a child of the 50s and 60s, that's what was on in the afternoon, because that was the television from the 1950s that they then repurposed for kids, in the 60s. So Hopalong Cassidy, Roy Rogers. But on the other hand, you'd watch these shows in the afternoon, and then the news would come on, and here was John Glenn. Here were the Mercury 7 astronauts. And I think it was Lasseter who actually came up with the idea that, wait a minute, we have the old frontier, the American West, versus the new frontier, space. And it's like, why don't we have a cowboy toy interact or be in conflict with a spaceman toy? And so the ventriloquist dummy loses his top hat and his tuxedo and gets a cowboy outfit. And in fact, just this past week, I learned, did you know that Woody has a last name?
What? Woody Woodson? Woody
Woody,
Cowboy?
Woody Pride.
Pride. Yes, I
There we
learned that on Tumblr a couple years ago and forgot about it.
There we go. And the more interesting thing is that John Lasseter, because again, he wanted to sort of re-enhance the old frontier versus new frontier. He also wanted to do something where, it was like old Hollywood versus new Hollywood. So he was thinking initially, when it was going for a voice for Woody, that wouldn't it be cool if they got Paul Newman to voice Woody? And
right.
Conversely, for the Spaceman toy, what Lasseter remembered from growing up is, on the heels of G.I. Joe coming out in 1964, the action figure.
Wait. Where did Casper come in?
Well, Casper, when John Lasseter was a little boy, he got a Casper toy. In fact, what's kind of interesting is it was the second generation of pull-string talking toys that Mattel put on the market. The first one came out in 1960. And it was Chatty Cathy, which, by the way...
Inspired Talkie Tina.
Yeah, which showed up on The Twilight Zone in, I want to say, 1963. In fact, weird little sidebar here. June Foray, of course, the voice acting legend, Rockin' Bullwinkle and all that. But
And the Animation Union.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I mean, it just... he had a huge role in the industry. But the interesting thing is that she voiced for Mattel the original Chatty Cathy. And then 3 years later, when Rod Serling wanted to do an episode of The Twilight Zone that had basically an evil Chatty Cathy, Talkie Tina, right?
Right.
He reached out to June, and June was tickled that, she got the invitation and basically did her Chatty Cathy voice, only, I'm going to kill you.
I'm Talkie Tina, and I'm going to kill you.
But
You better
anyway,
be nice. I have a great June foray story. My dad and I were at one of the the Mark Davis lectures at the Academy, and she came in, and she was no bigger than a minute. She was tiny, but she had been one of my late brother's clients. So I said, "Hey, I'm Jim's little sister," and she remembered him and said he was great. He handled her stuff well, and she said she was kind of shook up. She'd just been in a car accident. So what happened was she likes to kick off her extremely high, chunky heels when she drives, and she went to brake, and one of the shoes had slid under the brake, so she hit somebody. Nobody was hurt, but she was shook up. So my dad and I bought her orange Grey Goose martinis, and the three of us sat there and got pickled on Grey Goose martinis before Andreas went up and did all his amazing stuff.
oh, that's a great story. Wow.
Yeah, she was a great lady. And my brother, when he was handling her finances, said that she and Paul Frees were his favorite customers.
Wow. We'll have to talk about Paul Frees at some point. Anyway, getting back to the Casper story. After Chatty Cathy comes out in 1960, he's a huge success. Mattel immediately looks around, well, we got to do more of these pull-string talking dolls. So they do Matty Mattel, literally a doll that's supposed with the last name Mattel, and his sister Belle Mattel. But they wanted to sort of dip their toe in licensing. And it turns out the most affordable license at that point, because frankly the character had been off the market for years, was Casper the Friendly Ghost from Paramount's famous studios, their animation line. And so they did a Casper the Friendly Ghost doll. So they followed Chatty Cathy with a string of 3 dolls. And the interesting thing is, John Lasseter, as a young boy, this was a toy that he got. In fact, there's a number of pictures of John in the family station wagon where it's John, his sister, and his brother. And there's John happily clutching his Casper the Friendly Ghost doll. But anyway, back to Toy Story and them sussing out the characters. So, again, they're looking to do a spaceman character to sort of counteract the Woody, or, to come into conflict with the cowboy. And, it's like, well, what should we do for a spaceman character? And John, again, who's a huge toy collector, said, well, remember, after G.I. Joe came out in 1964, Mattel had to come up with its own, action figure for boys, and they decided, especially what with the Vietnam War becoming that much more controversial, it's like, let's not do war toys, let's do space toys. So they come up with a character called Major Matt Mason, who's a spaceman. In fact, what's interesting is they cribbed a lot of the ideas for the toy and its accessory straight from what NASA was doing. There's a famous cover of Life magazine with a giant sort of supersized spacesuit that Mattel immediately turned around and made that for Major Matt Mason. But Major Matt Mason, to get to the market quickly and to be affordable, was basically half the size of G.I. Joe. And that's why when you see the original versions of Woody and Buzz is like 6 inches tall, if that. Because, again, he's modeled after Major Matt Mason. In fact, the giveaway that he's modeled after Major Matt Mason is the character's original name was Lunar Larry.
And he wore the same red jumpsuit.
He did. But again, remember we talked old Hollywood versus new Hollywood. And so they were looking for somebody who had been in recent hit films to come in and voice Lunar Larry. And Billy Crystal was just at this time coming off of a huge success, City Slickers. And so Lasseter reaches out to Billy Crystal, and to sell him on the idea of being the character, they actually animated a piece of test footage from When Harry Met Sally. There's the famous speech about the wagon-wheeled coffee table. And they animate Lunar Larry talking about the coffee table. And in fact, when he makes his exit, he walks out under the wagon wheel coffee table. And they showed it to Billy Crystal, and he's like, what? He didn't get, why am I watching animation of me from a different movie. I don't, and why is he walking under the coffee? Billy just didn't get it. So he passed on the project, and, they're talking about, we need new Hollywood to go against the old Hollywood, Paul Newman. And who do they reach out to? Who's just had 2 monster hit films at this point, The Mask and Ace Ventura, but Jim Carrey.
God, no.
Seriously.
No, I believe you. Just God, no.
Yeah. In fact, at this point, to make the character a little more Jim Carrey friendly, they changed his name from Lunar Larry to Tempest of Morph, I want to say.
Like Mork from Work.
Yeah. And Carrey said no, which is kind of interesting because earlier this week, we saw the trailer drop for Sonic the Hedgehog, and here's Carrey's take on Dr. Robotnik. There's also a pretty extensive run at doing Jim Carrey starring in a remake of Don Knotts' The Incredible Mr. Limpet. I mean, they got pretty far down the line there. All right, at this point, though, here's the problem. Jeffrey Katzenberg is like, we need stars. We need stars for the voices in this thing. And Paul Newman, after considering it, says no. And of course, we already know about Billy Crystal. Though the interesting thing is, as soon as Toy Story came out and became this huge hit, Crystal, just regret isn't the proper word. It's like, oh God, I was an idiot. So one day, he and his wife Janice are at home, and the phone rings, and the caller ID just says Pixar. And Crystal picks up the phone, and his first word is yes. And it's like, hello? It's like, yes. It's like, Mr. Crystal? Yes. It's like, what's going on? He says, I don't care what you're offering me. I'm saying yes. Just let me make a movie with you guys. And that's how he ended up making Monsters, Inc. And Paul Newman obviously came around. Doc Hudson for Cars.
Yep.
On the other hand, Tom Hanks, they did pretty much the same thing they did with Billy Crystal. They created a piece of test animation. Only in this case, it was the Woody...
It was a speech from Philadelphia, right?
Well, actually, no, it was Turner and Hooch. There was that great...
I know it was Turner and Hooch.
But the great thing is it was, Woody reacting to a play school dog in a play school car. And it was like, car, don't eat the car. And Hanks, to his credit, was immediately charmed. And it's like, wow, this is cool. Yeah, I'm in. Though, interestingly enough, there's also a story about how he talked about, in fact, you just mentioned Philadelphia. He talked about, hey, guys, I should probably not be doing voice work for an animated film while I'm doing Philadelphia or I'm doing Castaway, because I don't know if I can switch gears between light comedy and drama that easily. So that was interesting. He'd only come in and do voice work in the movies when he was working on comedies. He felt like I'm in the right headspace and that sort of thing. They get the film finished, or they're getting the film finished, and it's now, again, this is the Walt Disney Company, and we're all about the retail channels and getting stuff out there. And so they were, well, can we merchandise Toy Story? I mean, again, it's called Toy Story. It seems pretty logical we should sell some toys. But when they go to the American International Toy Fair in February of 1995, none of the major toy manufacturers, Hasbro, Mattel, any of them, they aren't interested in all. They look at the art and they're a little concerned about how, they don't look cuddly. They don't, oddly enough, the toys, because they're rendered in CG, they don't look huggable.
Yeah, they're kind of cold.
For a lot of these folks, it was like, look, nothing personal. We'd really like to stick with Hunchback or talk with you about the next one down the line, Pocahontas. But we'll take a pass on Toy Story. And the one that ends up willing to take a shot on this is a teeny tiny toy company out of Toronto called Thinkway. But it takes, from February till April to finally get the contract finalized. So there are only 5 months left at this point to get a toy design built and then shipped off to manufacturing facilities overseas, which is why for Christmas of 1995, Thinkway was only able to get 50,000 plush Woody dolls, which, remember, you've got your pull string with your voice box and your plastic head. But on the other hand,
short-sighted retailers.
Well, yeah, but the other issue here was difficulty of manufacturing. I mean, in the case of Buzz, because he was hard plastic, virtually all hard plastic, they were only able to get 20,000 of them made out ahead of Christmas. Then it comes out, holiday 1995. It is the hottest toy of that season. And I think, well, you tell that great story about David and Thomas.
Yeah. When they ran the first Toy Story parade at Disney MGM Studios.
Mm-hmm.
David and Thomas, when they first ran the new Toy Story parade at Disney MGM Studios, as it was back then, David and Thomas followed behind the rope, holding their Buzz and their Woody, and people were just like, "Where did you get that?"
Mm-hmm. I remember that we caught the first screening of the day at the AMC Pleasure Island of Toy Story, and we got out of the movie in time to then drive over to Disney MGM to catch the very first time that the Toy Story parade rolled through the studio theme park. And now I guess, the irony is that, here we are, we're coming full circle. Here's Toy Story 4, and Tinny has a role in this film, and
now we can go see the movie and then go to Toy Story Land. I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, for strictly selfish reasons, I'm kind of hoping that there is a Tinny toy available as part of the Toy Story 4 retail program. Though, if you want to talk about bringing things full circle, and remember when they were talking about a Tin Toy Christmas, Tinny was supposed to be paired with a Charlie McCarthy-like ventriloquist doll, and we were just talking about Gabby, the villain of Toy Story 4, who's modeled on Chatty Cathy by way of Talkie Tina from Twilight Zone. But have you heard about her henchmen?
Only from you.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell the nice folks out there?
She's got a quartet of ventriloquist dummies who are dressed in tuxedos, who are her minions. That just cracks me up that, again, when you consider who Tinny was supposed to be paired with the original Tin Toy Christmas, that, God help us, we're back to ventriloquist dummies in tuxedos. While we're talking about creepy things, one particularly creepy touch, Toy Story 4, again, is coming out on June 21st of this year, but on the exact same day, the reboot of the Chucky movies, Child's Play, is coming out.
With Mark Hamill as Chucky.
Yeah, it's the voice of the toy, but it's being released by United Artists stateside. But what I find especially interesting, given how heavily Jeffrey Katzenberg was involved in the development of the original Toy Story, and how he so rabidly pursued John Lasseter to get him come back to Disney. But do you know who the producer of the Child's Play reboot is?
Let me think. No.
David Katzenberg, Jeffrey's son.
That cute baby we saw at Epcot that one time?
Yep, that's him. And if you folks want to see a particularly interesting poster, the teaser poster for Chucky came out just last week, and you see basically Chucky walking off to the side of the poster, but there on the ground is the cowboy doll that he's just mangled that looks an awful lot like Woody. So I can't help but think they deliberately picked this release date going head to head with Toy Story 4 with the hope that they'll get a little heat and they'll get a little attention.
Well, you know what? It worked, because I get the news on my Amazon. And that was actually one of the things they were talking about in entertainment news, was that poster.
Very cool. Okay, folks, so that's pretty much it for this episode of I Want That, and hopefully we'll be back in 2 weeks with another brand new show. But until then, Michelle, where can folks find you online?
MiceChat.com. I'm actually, I've been promoted. I'm doing the Mice Age updates now.
On my side of the fence, we've got the Disney Dish podcast with Len Testo. We've got Fine Tuning with Drew Taylor. We've got the Marvel Us Disney podcast with the amazing Aaron Adams. We have Looking at Lucasfilm with Dan Z. And the Universal Joint podcast with Dustin Fuse. So tell you what, if you would do Michelle and I a favor and head over to iTunes and rate and recommend our show. Likewise, if you really, really, really like what we do here, you could subscribe to Bandcamp. That helps keep the lights on, so to speak. And I guess for now, that'll do it. On behalf of Ms. Valladolid, thank you very much for listening.
Thanks.
And we'll be back with a new show shortly.